Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Season 5 of the SFEMA Council podcast. My name is Madeline, and I am again one of your co-hosts for this season, as well as the podcast administrator. Joining me today on the hosting side, I have Kendra, our social media manager. I'm going to throw it over to Kendra now to introduce our very special guest for today.
So today's guest is Julia Tocheri. Julia graduated from Ryerson University from the sports media program before jumping into the sports industry. Currently, you may recognize Julia from TSN as a content creator and a live events host on SportsCenter. Julia also works with Bar Down as a content creator. We are so pleased to welcome Julia as the 5th guest here on Season 5 of the SFEMA Council podcast.
Oh, what an intro. Thanks, guys, for having me. It's so fun.
So, Julia, as our first question, I wanted to know if you can tell us a little bit more about your role right now at TSN and Bar Down and how you ended up in these roles.
Yeah, it's been a fluid ride. So right now for me, my day-to-day is being a content creator for Bar Down and for TSN. I also host SportsCenter on kind of more of a fill-in basis. And then I'm a live events host as well for all of our junior hockey, our women's hockey. I do reporting for that. And I also do some reporting in junior hockey and some hosting too. So it's kind of like a little smattering, a little buffet of everything, which I feel is kind of in line with the way sport media is just moving these days. It used to be, even when I was in school, like we had, and I only graduated in 2020, so I feel old sometimes, but I literally just graduated. But even when I was in school, there wasn't a whole, like we had a class on social media where we'd talk about like how to tweet as a reporter, which is relevant, but also like you just kind of tweet the lines and add maybe a hashtag. And you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't a super sophisticated study of social media. Whereas now, like I went to go visit TMU's sport media class and do a little chat with them a few weeks ago. And they're so much more sophisticated in teaching social media and using it as a tool, because it is kind of how people are consuming sports content these days. So it used to be like, you can be a host or you can be a reporter, or you can just kind of had to pick your role. You can be a photographer, you can be a videographer. And now my job, and I feel like everybody who works in sport media, their job has become kind of a combination of all these things. Like you can be a host or reporter, but can you shoot your own on cams? Because sometimes that has to be done too. Even in a really professional setting, like reporting for a TSN broadcast, I'll have to shoot my own stuff sometimes. So yeah, a lot of different roles happening all at once, and they all kind of stemmed from my spot where I started at TSN, which was with Bar Down and our social media team, and being on camera there and doing my best to prove that it could translate to other areas of the company as well.
I think you raised a good point there, like talking about how, now more than ever in the sports industry, not only in media, like you have to juggle so many things and know how to do so many roles. And I think that's important for students to know and people listening is like you kind of always have to have like that differentiator of yourself. So like, yeah, you can be a reporter, but can you also like do social media or like yeah, you can like be on the marketing team, but can you also public speak? Because maybe they need somebody to go do this at an event. So kind of having those, like little tidbits of things that aren't necessarily in your job description, but can help you identify like differently than everybody else is important right now.
Yeah, totally. We have this like joke at TSN. It's like other duties as described or other duties as they come. Because you know how they put that at the end of like job
Yeah.
postings, like other duties as necessary. Like it feels like half of our jobs now are other duties as necessary. But you do have to be fluid. Like it's not a secret with the way that a lot of places are understaffed now. We're not hiring so many like editors full time because people are kind of expected to edit their own stuff now. So it's kind of bleak in that sense, but also it provides a whole lot of opportunity to be creative and really to get to produce your own content and get to create your own kind of space. Whereas before you were kind of boxed in. Like if I wanted to be a hockey reporter 10 years ago, I have to throw on the black blazer and act really masculine, act a certain type of way, be really serious. Whereas now I think there's more room for personality.
100%. I love that.
For
And
sure. Yeah.
go ahead, Maddy.
No, go ahead, Kendra.
Like to add on to what was said before, like I think it's so important that like girls now and even guys, like we're realizing that there's so many opportunities and everything's kind of like combined. Like I honestly never saw myself as an in-game host, and now here I'm an in-game host, and I always wanted to be a reporter. But like when you start to do more, like you learn how connected everything is. Like it's
Oh,
if you
totally.
fit one position, you're most likely going to fit the next. And like now it's like I'll never like I want to do both, and I love both of them so much, and I never would have known that that would have been like what I would do. So
Yeah,
Julia, you relate to that because you
totally. I didn't really see myself as an in-game host either because I was always like, oh, isn't that kind of cheesy? But then there's aspects of reporting that you need for an in-game host, and it also, I don't know, it also gives you a relationship with a specific team, and it allows you to just kind of see how things work on a day-to-day basis. Like there's aspects of every single role, like from running coffees at the Olympics when I was in second year university that still today I think are applicable. Like you could pull something from any role. That's always a big piece of advice I give. Even if an opportunity isn't exactly where you see yourself, isn't exactly what you want to do, especially when you're first starting out, just take the opportunity and make the most of it because you might wind up doing something you kind of fall in love with.
Yeah, that's super important. And we can tell that like, you love sports media. That's obviously why you're in like that realm of the industry. So what do you love most about it? Like what do you love most about sports media and the sports industry?
Ooh, um, what do I love most? I think what I love most is that when I'm doing what I really love, when I'm at a game and um I'm about to go live on air, it just doesn't really feel like work. Like there are moments where it feels like work during the day when I'm grinding out a content idea and I don't really there's nothing really happening in hockey. Like there are moments when it feels like work, but at its very best, it doesn't feel like work at all. It feels kind of like you're living a dream when you get to be at a hockey game and get paid to be there and get to chit chat and get to kind of be in the mix in the stands and talk to the players. At its very best, it doesn't feel like work. And the other thing I have to say is that the people in the industry are so gosh darn good. The people behind the scenes, um, I've really had good experiences with players and coaches. So I would say the people and just the fact that oftentimes it really doesn't feel like work. I feel whenever I'm like, oh, I'm tired, I don't feel like working. I'm like, come on, Julia, are you working? Are you working, babes? Like your friend works in emergency at the hospital. Like, are you working?
Yeah.
So that part of it is pretty special.
I can definitely relate to that because I know that when I was growing up, I was like, I don't really want to like go to work and hate my job. Like, I don't want to
Mhm.
do something that I don't like. So I totally relate to that because I'm pursuing something that I love so much and it doesn't feel like a job to go to work. Like, I'm having fun when I'm at work. And I think that's something that people kind of need to understand because you should be happy when you go to work. You should feel excited.
Yeah.
And I'm always excited. And I know a lot of people in the sports industry are always so excited to like just go to work, have some fun, see the people that you love, and everyone who has the same passions as you.
Yeah, I think there's also like a part of that that you have to be mindful of as well because sometimes it's easy. It's your job. So some days you don't feel like doing anything. So some
Mhm.
days it is like a little bit of a grind to go to a I don't know, like a game that's a blowout or a junior game that's not very good. Like sometimes it is a grind and even if you're in a like a spot of privilege, like some days it is going to feel like a grind. And you also have to be conscious because sports are my favorite thing in the world. Like hockey is like my favorite thing in the world. So you have to be careful not to let work taint your passion. If that makes sense to you at all, because once it starts to feel like work, you really got to remind yourself, I don't know, how lucky you are, just other things that you can be doing that are crappier. Because sometimes when your whole so I loved hockey, and hockey was like a treat to me before because it was an escape from school or escape from, well, just school, because pretty much all I've done before working in sports is school. But now it's like my job that I do every single day. So you do kind of have to walk that line of this is so lucky. It doesn't feel like work all the time, but also I have to be mindful not to gain a sense of resentment for it, because it just is so all consuming all the time.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about that the other day when we were at the TFC game, because we finished out their last game there for the season, and I'm not gonna say in a positive or negative way, but they had a historic season that kind of, brought down some people's energy and excitement to come to every game.
Yep.
Because it wasn't as exciting as like you might hope, right? So by the end of the season, we kind of as a team had to say to each other, if the result always isn't happening out on the field, we have the ability to still make that excitement happen on the back end. So you only have the ability to control what you can. So let's take control of that and still make sure that the fans have a great time and still make sure that everything goes to plan, even if we don't come up in the long run. So that's
Yeah.
super important. Is like not really letting the effect of the game like have a toll on everybody else working.
Yeah. Like a bad day in a hockey arena is still better than like some of my best days that I had working on like a horse farm, for example. So
Yeah.
I love the farm. So I think that perspective is important. Even if the team's losing, you're still at a soccer, football. I don't know. I just watched Ted Lasso, so now I feel like calling it football. You're at a soccer game and you're having fun and you can have drinks with friends. Like it's still fun. Like even when things aren't great in sports, you still got to have that perspective that it's still sports, it's still fun.
Yeah.
So for our third question, I was wondering, what is your biggest advice that you could give to students who are looking to succeed in the sports media industry? And I question a lot.
Yeah. So I think it's twofold. The first part I really do say to everyone, like always my big piece of advice is just kind of take whatever opportunity presents itself to you. I know I already said it, but just when you're first starting. Because I got in at TSN because there was like a fourth year student at my school doing a practicum project, and the practicum was producing Western's Yates Cup football game versus Queens, I think. I don't even remember. And they did not ask me first to be the sideline reporter, like, because it was a free thing. You had to drive to London. It was November, it was cold, and it was a Sunday morning, and I was in first year university. So, like, you can just imagine what was going on at that point in my life. So they asked a couple older girls to go. They said no. I think they asked a couple other people to go. They said no. And eventually they were like, hey, we saw you do the hockey game for Ryerson. I'd done like 2 games at that point. Would you have any interest in being the sideline reporter for this event? And I was like, sure. So little like 18 or 19-year-old me hopped in some like random upperclassman's car and we went to London, and I did probably a like supremely mediocre job being the reporter for this football game. But I just like said yes to the opportunity, and that upperclassman ended up working at TSN. And then when my boss, Dave, eventually was like, hey, we want to start bringing in some new people, he brought my name up from that particular event and showed my boss the video. So that's the only reason that I started at TSN. It was just kind of, there's always going to be luck involved. Like you have to get a little bit lucky, but if you put yourself out there enough, you give yourself more of an opportunity to be lucky. So there is always a little bit of luck involved, but you can sway that luck a lot by putting yourself out there all the time and just increasing the likelihood that somebody will notice you, increase the likelihood of making a connection. So say yes to everything is always it's a lot. Like when I was in fourth year university, I had 4 jobs. It was the most ridiculous thing ever. And I don't know that I'd suggest that anybody do that. But when you're first starting out and you're kind of in that grind, just say yes to as much as you can to get all those experiences. Um, and my second and I didn't do this because it was a little bit different when I was coming in. But it's changed so much in the last 4 or 5 years. But brand yourself, because if you have the opportunity, like we all have this social media that can be so catch-22. Sometimes I want to like throw my phone away and never see it again. And I actually did that for a while this summer. Just threw it in the lake, not on purpose, and just like left it there for a week. So it was awesome. So sometimes I'm like, I love social media because it's such a powerful tool. And I know it has kind of a negative side to it too, because I can be hard on myself if I post something that doesn't perform well. Like there's always a catch-22. But just start posting, create what you want to see. If you want to create a little bit of a niche spot for yourself in sport media, because I know us at TSN, like we find our graphic designers on social media, we find our new content creators now on social media. I know other networks do that same thing as well. Like anyone who creates a presence for themselves online, can usually find themselves a spot at a network. And now like networks are becoming a little bit redundant. Like I think it's fair to say that broadcast media isn't as I don't know, it's just not at the forefront the way that it used to be. Game broadcasts are never going anywhere. We're always going to have live game broadcasts, but shows like SportsCenter, like highlight shows, plays of the week, which I do sometimes now, like I don't know how much we need those and I don't know how much longer those are going to be produced, because I get my sports news immediately on my phone. And again, I'm completely excluding live game broadcasts from this. But so now you have characters like Steve Dangle and I don't know, the on the bench guys, Coach Chippy, who've created these media personalities for themselves without being attached to any network. So I think that's a really interesting concept, and it's what I would recommend if I was just coming up now.
I think you raised a good point there about using your network, because a lot of the time like we get told so much in SPIMA, like build your network, make sure you're
Yeah.
networking, like talking to all these people. And I think that's great, but I think a lot of people get nervous to use their network and to use their connections, and they don't want to ask for too much, and they don't know what they can ask for, or
Right.
how they can foster those. So I think that's important for like people to know, is that like if you meet somebody cool, if you want to reach out, like if you're listening to this podcast and you wanna talk to Julia, like I'm sure we could send her a message saying
Yeah.
this person reached out and they are interested in meeting you or want your connection. Like that's how the industry works, and you have to not be afraid to ask, because I've always my thing is that if you don't ask, you're never going to know. So I'm fine with the answer being no, but if I didn't ask, I would still be wondering what the answer was.
Yeah, that's so true. You don't have to be shy. Like everyone who comes up in sports has to, like, I'm so cringy and annoying. Like I sent an email say, hey, if any NHL needs to be covered while people are at World Juniors this year, just know that I'll cover it. Like I sent that to our director of live events today. Like you always got to ask, even if they're like, no, we're covered. Yeah, like it's fine. I'll send that email anyways. And networking, I don't know why I'm like so anti. The word networking just makes me cringe, kind of. So I feel like the word networking could just throw people off, when really, like, just to make it sound less I don't know, less daunting, or less, because I kind of have I shy away a little bit from like super corporate stuff, because it feels a little bit disingenuous to me. But when I'm genuinely connecting with people, it doesn't feel like networking, because networking feels like you're always trying to get something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But if you're just trying to connect with people, and if you're asking questions, it could just be real genuine connections that wind up being beneficial down the road, as opposed to like, I'm going to network so I can meet this person and hopefully get this. Like just go into situations with an open mind, because you just never really know.
Yeah. I think for me as well, like personally, like I'll use the women's worlds as an example. I've
Yeah.
always seeing you and you were someone that I always like and I still look up to.
Aw.
And so having that experience to get to like just talk to you as like a conversation, you know what I mean? Not as in like just, oh, a connection, like getting to be face to face with you and have a conversation and just understand you and not just on social media. Like it's so special. And I think a lot of people, they are scared to reach out to people that they like look up to when it
Yeah.
can be something that's like intimidating because at the end of the day, I think that we all want to help each other out. And it's nice to just like have a friendship within like the industry. You know what I mean? Like even I have like it's weird, but I have young girls ask me already, and I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
I'm starstruck.
Totally.
But like just having, and I'm always like, if you need anything, like just text me because I want to be able to be there for someone, and like it's not just like knowing someone; it's like a actual genuine like relationship.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's a way that our industry has gotten a lot better, interestingly enough, in the past 5 years. Because I remember being in school in like 2016 or 2017 and having a prof, a female prof who is like an executive producer at CBC, say something like like there was only 6 or 7 girls in the class and say something like, well, probably only one of the girls will make it because there's usually only one girl in every broadcast. So immediately that created this like sense of competition specifically between the women in the program.
Yeah.
And I know that's not true because like Ailish was in my class and Ailish is on TV at the fan and is on the radio at the fan. I'm in that class. Like there's more than one of us have made it on air and made it in the industry. Um, but now it feels like, I don't know, maybe it was the Me Too movement. I don't know what it was, but there just seems to be this like really the sense of sisterhood that it exists in sport media now that allows for more real connections, and I think it's been really beneficial for the women in the industry.
100%. I totally agree. It's not a competition, and I think
Yeah.
a lot of people think it is, but it's not. We're all here
Yeah,
for each other. We're all like each other's cheerleaders on a journey, is how I.
totally. Yeah, and it used to feel like a competition because that's kind of the way that it was set up. There was only one woman on every panel. There was only one woman in every control room. So like how could you not feel competitive specifically towards other women? But as that started to shift, as like Jen Botterill and Cassie Campbell could be on the same panel at the same time. We could have Tessa and Cheryl on the same panel at the same time. It doesn't have to be that way. So I think as the industry's opened up a little bit more, it's allowed for these connections to happen.
Or even take that PWHL draft. It was
Yeah.
only a panel of women. There were 4 women on that panel all day long, which I thought was like super powerful for us in the industry. So
Yeah, that was really cool to see.
yeah, well, we've been having a great conversation so far, but we also like to have a little bit of fun and just talk sports, not always
Yep.
like the heavy stuff. So our first like sports question for you is, what is your most memorable experience that you have in the sport industry, whether that be like outside of university or while you were at TMU? What do you think?
Okay, I'm just struggling with this one. I'll always remember my first game broadcast for Ryerson. It was versus uh OUIT or whatever that school is. You know what I'm talking about?
Ontario
UOIT.
Tech.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
versus them. It was the Ryerson men's team versus them. That will always stand out in my head as like, holy crap, this is crazy. So Ryerson does such a good job with the broadcast. Like I had an IFB, I had the little mic flag, like I felt like I was in it. The other ones that'll always stand out to me, uh the Women's World Championships in the bubble in 2021 when Marie-Philippe Poulin got the goal in OT. I got to talk to her after, and that was like one of the first times I had ever spoken to her. She told me she liked my TikToks. I was like screaming my head off. I'll never forget that as long as I live. And now she's like, I could talk to her like normally, which is crazy. And then, okay, 2 more. The most recent World Juniors in Halifax. The last 2 World Juniors have just been insane though. When McTavish pulled that puck off the line in the summer was cool in Edmonton, but the Bedard just the whole Bedard World Juniors in Halifax this past year. Halifax is one of the coolest places in the world. Some amazing food, some amazing people, and the atmosphere in that rink. It's all tin. The roof's all tin too. So every time Canada would score and they'd play heave away, it felt like the roof was gonna blow off the building. I don't know if I'll ever be in an atmosphere again like that in sports. And then the other one is the Memorial Cup this year. I got to talk to Patrick Roy a whole lot. He was coaching Quebec. Um, and when they won, I was in the Gatorade shower with Patrick Roy, and it's his last heat. He left the Quebec League after that. It was his last Memorial Cup, and I kind of got to be a part of that moment. So that's my little highlight reel. I couldn't pick one.
All special moments.
Yeah.
Well, to go into our second little fun question, but we kind of covered this a little bit, but if there's anything else you want to highlight, what do you think that you did in university that helped you get to this point with all of those accomplishments and favorite memories in mind?
Well, never say no is always going to be up there for me. Say yes to everything, take every opportunity. Never say no was probably a bad tagline. That's probably not my life motto, but take all the opportunities is the way to say that in a more intelligent way. And doing it, like doing game broadcasts was probably the most just the thing that helped me the most. I was able to build a little bit of a demo reel. So even though it was obviously all volunteer, I would just suggest to get out to whatever like local TV, junior, university, whatever broadcast you can get on, because you just have to be doing it. Like if you're not doing it, you're not going to get any better. So that doing those Ryerson Rams Live broadcasts was, I think, what was the most helpful to me as a broadcaster. But then being nice to people, like people, especially in that program, are colleagues now. They're in charge of things now. So just making sure I was conscious about making good connections in school, because especially if you're in a program like sport media or you guys at Brock, I'm sure that lots of you guys will end up in the industry. So like, I don't know, people are annoying in class. You got to kind of keep in the back of your head, like, I don't know what they'll be in charge of one day. So make good connections, and definitely if you're interested in broadcasting, just get out and do it in whatever capacity you can, as much as you can.
Yeah, for sure. And then you've talked a lot about, you said at the beginning, hockey's kind of your thing. You love hockey, you do it every day. So the NHL season has just started, but what are your predictions for the Stanley Cup this year?
My Stanley Cup final in my Julia world that I live in is the Edmonton Oilers and the Toronto Maple Leafs. And the Stanley Cup will finally come home to Canada, and hopefully Austin Matthews will be carrying it above his head. I don't know. I had the Oilers. I was so like hot and heavy on the Oilers. Something makes me feel better. Them having a slow start makes me feel like they'll be even better in the second half, kind of like the way they were last year. Yeah, I said Oilers Leafs at the beginning of the season, and I'm going to stay on that despite how the Edmonton Oilers have been bad to start so far.
Oh, I hope the Leafs too. My dad has gone way too long in his life
Me too.
to not see them win again.
Yeah, it's not even me, it's my dad. He's born in 68. Like, it's not even for me, it's for him.
Yeah.
I can't say I agree, guys. I can't say it.
Not the Bruins.
I don't think the Bruins have a chance of winning, unfortunately.
Why are they so good this year? Like, how do they always do it? It's so annoying, but good for them, I guess.
What's happening? I haven't watched a game. Like, I haven't had time to sit down and watch.
Yeah.
So I think that I just can't watch them, or else they'll lose.
That might actually be it.
That's my theory. But I personally think that Vegas will win again. I don't know why. I just have a feeling about them. They're there, and
yeah, they've got the goaltending. They've got that scary blue line. It's going to be hard to take that Golden Knights team down for sure.
Yeah. Well, Julia, we've been having a great conversation with you today, and we appreciate all the advice and things that you've shared with us. But we like to give our guests the final word and give you the floor before we close out the episode. So, On behalf of Kendra and I and the SPEMA Council podcast, we want to thank you for joining us today. And the floor is yours. Anything you want to finish out with?
Oh, okay. Well, thank you guys. Doing stuff like this is great. I'm glad that you guys have this going. I appreciate you having me. My final word, say say yes to every opportunity that's in front of you, even if you think it's a crappy opportunity. You never know what you'll fall in love with. And make sure you're nice to people, because honestly, being nice to people it sounds so cheesy. Like, I kind of want to throw up hearing myself say that, even as a piece of career advice. But nobody gets anywhere in sports. It's all connections. It's all like who you know and how you treat people. And if you treat people well and if you work hard, you will create your own luck, and something will fall for you.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you guys.